Hello, this is Jace from Source Elements, and today I'm going to be showing you a new and exciting Source Nexus feature, introducing the Mute On button. We've taken the powerful customization and automation functionality of the Mute On plugin and have brought it to nearly every mute button in many Source Nexus products. Let me show you how it works. When you see this little down arrow on a mute button now, it means that this mute button has Mute On functionality built in. Right-click on the button to bring up the menu with all of your mute on settings. Here we can set what behavior we want the button to have for the different playback states: play, record, stop, or idle, and also set a keyboard or MIDI trigger to trigger a mute or dim action. I'm going to go through the different options we have for each playback state. By default, it will be set to do nothing, which doesn't affect the audio at all. It doesn't mute it or dim it. We can unmute the audio if it's coming from a muted state in a different playback state. We can mute it, or we can dim it and select the dim value that we want. The main benefit is that now you can take any of the features in Mute On and use them in any other Source Nexus plugin or application. So if you are already using a Source Nexus plugin, such as Source Nexus IO, to route audio in and out, now you can apply the powerful functionality of Mute On directly in the plugin. Let's say I'm using this instance of Nexus IO to send out my TalkBack mic to Source Connect or Source Nexus Gateway, but now I want to add TalkBack switch functionality. I can do that now using the existing instance of the plugin by going to the Mute On settings of the Send Mute button. In this case, I want to use a key on my keyboard to be my TalkBack switch. So first, I'm going to set that under On Key, and I can either do a momentary command or a latch command. In this case, I'm going to do momentary, so I'm going to click this and then hit the key on my keyboard that I want to assign. And now I can go back to verify that it's been set, and we can see that here. That's the slash key. Next, I'm going to set the action for on key to unmute, because I want my mic to unmute when I hold down that key. Since I want my talkback muted the rest of the time, I'll set each of the playback states to mute. And you'll see when I change on play to mute, now the button has a blue border around it. That is indicating that I have set one of the options here to something other than do nothing. And that's just to quickly show that this button now has mute on functionality enabled on it. It still works as a normal mute button as well. If I click the button, it will mute the signal, and if I unclick it, it'll unmute. And that'll override any of the options that I have set for mute on as well, so that if I need to quickly mute it, I can still do that. Next, I'll set on record to mute as well, and on stop to mute. And now you'll see that since playback is idle right now, and I set on stop to mute, the mute button has engaged automatically. And you'll see it's a little different when it's engaged automatically. Instead of being a red color, like when I click it manually, it's more of an orange color. And that's just to differentiate whether it's been automatically muted or manually muted. And now if I hit the key on my keyboard and hold it, you can see my talkback is active, and when I release it, it's muted again. So now I have a talkback switch built into my Nexus IO plugin that I'm already using to send out my talkback signal. The Source Nexus Review plugin also has the new Mute On button implemented in several different places. You'll see all the mute buttons on each channel are now a Mute On button, except for the To Nexus Chat channel, which, because we're coming from the talkback switch now has a Mute On button enabled in it as well. If I right click on it, you'll see it has all the same options as Mute On now. By default, it's still going to work exactly the same as before as a normal talkback switch with the same defaults, but now it can be customized even further, and additionally, it now has MIDI functionality, so you can assign a MIDI key or command to trigger the talkback. One useful case for this would be if you wanted to mute the incoming audio from guests on Source Nexus Gateway coming into the Source Nexus Review plugin during recording to prevent disruptions, you can now set the From Nexus Chat channel to mute on play. And now you'll see that the mute button has highlighted blue to show that it has a mute option enabled in the settings. Another icon you might see on the mute button if you have dim enabled. So I'm going to enable dim here on stop. It's going to change to a yellow D button to indicate that it's being dimmed rather than muted. Source Nexus Router also has the new mute on button on every route, so the same functionality is available here, although since Source Nexus Router runs as a standalone application, it's not getting playback states from any source. So what we've done is we've added what we're calling the mute on broadcaster. And this is available again in any mute on button. If you have an instance of mute on running in your DAW, and you go to the settings, you'll see there's a new setting here which shows an ID number. And this plugin is now broadcasting the playback state from this DAW to this ID number. If we go to the Mute On plugin now in the Source Nexus Router application and go to the Mute On Broadcaster setting, we want it to control the playback state, yes. And now if we can select the source that we want it to listen to. Here you'll see several different popular DAWs available, and if we go to Pro Tools, there's an auto mode, and it's also showing the ID number from the plugin that we have active. If you select auto, it's just going to pick the first instance that it finds, but if you have a specific instance that you want it to follow, you will see a list of all of the detected instances here, and you can select the matching ID number. So I'll go ahead and select this, and back over in the Mute On button, I'm just going to set the on play action to mute. And now if I go back to Pro Tools and hit play, that button is muting automatically. What's especially cool about this is that I can run an instance of Mute On in any DAW that I want, and it can broadcast that playback state to any other mute button on the same system. So it can be in the Source Nexus Router standalone application, it can be in the Source Nexus Review standalone application, or it can be in the Source Nexus IO or Review plugins running in a different DAW even. If I wanted to send the playback state into a different DAW that I'm running, I can now do that. And it works across multiple computers on the same network as well. So if I have Pro Tools running on a different Mac or Windows machine, and I want to control this machine, I can also do that as long as I have an instance of the Mute On plugin running in the DAW that I want to broadcast the playback state from. I'll be able to see that on the same network from any other computer with Source Nexus installed.